The Dice Tower is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. And by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff, in stock at coolstuffinc.com. The Dice Tower, episode 501.
Deck building games.
Welcome to The Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. On today's show, board game breakfast contributor Suzanne Sheldon joins us to talk about what we've been playing lately, and Geoff tracks the history of the I split, you choose mechanic. Plus, your questions from the mailbag, including thoughts on luck versus strategy and introducing games to our kids, and our top 10 deck building games. I'm Eric Summerer, and here's your host, the Bob Vila of board gaming, Tom Vassell.
What? Why?
What? Oh, come on. You don't know who Bob Vila is?
I'm asking a why question.
Why? Because Bob Vila makes all sorts of decks. When he restores this old house, he might take out an old deck, build a new deck.
I feel like you may have used this one before.
It's entirely possible. Quite possibly when we did our last deck building games list, but I have no idea when that was. It's years. It's been years.
373. Hey, folks.
Yeah.
This is the first episode in the second half of our 1,000-episode run.
Is that what we're now counting down? Is that how this works?
That maybe we will. But anyway, this is the new Dice Tower we're calling this 4.0.
Sure.
1.0 was Joe, 2.0 was Sam, 3.0 is Eric, 4.0 is Eric plus somebody else to keep Tom in check.
Ooh, because now you've reached such power that we need more than one person to counteract you?
I'm not saying that.
I think that's what you're saying.
My opinions are so wrong, they need to be throttled by others.
It needs two people to rescue you from the abyss.
Actually, I think we're just agreeing too much is what it is. Anyway, we have now visiting guest hosts, and so our first guest host is Suzanne Sheldon. Welcome to the show.
Hello, everybody. I am so excited to help throttle Tom back. I can't wait.
Yeah, I may have picked the wrong choice there. There could be too much enthusiasm in that regard.
Yeah.
The throttle control chair. That's what we're going to call it.
I like it.
It doesn't seem like it's been that long since we've seen you. Gamma doesn't seem too far ago.
No, it really doesn't. And hanging out with you guys is one of my favorite things to do. So I'm incredibly honored to be asked to be the first guest co-host on Dice Tower 4.0. I have to admit, I've recorded a number of podcasts before, but I've never been as nervous as I am right now. So wish me luck, guys.
Good luck.
That's mostly Eric.
It is. He's so intimidating.
I am off air.
He is.
Definitely.
I'm scared myself. So, folks, the way the show's going to work is, well, pretty much the same as it always has. Our odd-numbered shows, or at least every other show, will be a big show in which we're going to have a third co-host. So it'll be a little bit longer than our shows have been in the past. But then our in-between show will be a shorter show where we just talk about games. I'm assuming that's why most of you are here, is to listen about games.
That's why I'm here.
You know, it's funny, though, because it's an easy road for a podcast to go down where you talk about games and you're like, let's talk about some other stuff. And sometimes the podcasts, I've listened to a few that have gone, I listened to one time, I think, where they talked for 30 minutes and then finally about games. And that's fine.
We try and have a stopwatch that'll, let us move on quickly enough.
So I'm going to start by giving a little biography about each of my children. We're just... I need some encouragement, guys. Today I filled up my taxes, so I need happiness.
Ooh, I hear you. I've figured that out too, and it's not pleasant.
The whole doing your own business it's less exciting. Although it is interesting when I'm like, I bought a game. I can write that off.
Technically, yeah.
Where's the board game about doing taxes? Right? I mean, Spreadsheet the game. We do that all the time, right?
Let's see. I have a lot of games that feel like they're doing taxes. So let's start by talking about games. We'll start with Eric. Eric, tell us about a game that I've been waiting for you to play for a while.
Well, okay. Well, I have played Orléans for some time now, and really have enjoyed it as a competitive experience. But I got a chance to play Orléans Invasion actually over the last 2 weeks. It came to the table 2 weeks ago and this past weekend. And one thing that the expansion to Orléans does is it can turn the game into a cooperative experience. So in Orléans, the basic game, any version of the game, you are building a bag of stuff, workers that can do various things, and you're filling in slots on your board to trigger actions to then acquire stuff, goods, and move around the board and build structures and do all sorts of cool things. And get more guys that then go into your bag and you cycle them around as efficiently as you can. In the cooperative version, there are invaders coming. And it's based on the number of players, but at least with 4 players, you have 16 turns to prepare for this invasion. So what you have to do, you got a big mat that needs to be essentially filled in. You have to fill the walls with knights. So the red tokens, the knight tokens, need to be sent to the wall, taken out of people's bags and put on the wall. You have to acquire those citizens. They're little dudes that you sort of get as achievements for reaching certain points in tracks on the board in the basic game. But in this one, you earn them and then you send them directly to this slot on the board. You got to earn, I think it's like 9 of them in a 4-player game. So you have to do that. You have to collect goods because there are invaders coming. They're going to siege the castle. So you have to get cheese and wheat and wine and collect a bunch of those tokens. I think it's like 12 wheat tokens and 6 each of the wine and the cheese. Those need to be sent to the castle as well and secured. Let's see what else. You have to get all around the outside of the map. Every exterior city on the outskirts of the map needs to have a house built on it, which in the base game is like a little trading post that earns you victory points. But here, they have to be built as like guard towers. So you have to move around the board and build those, and they all need to be placed so there's no break in the wall before the invaders come. Then there's also, there's money. I forgot about the money. You have to bank a certain amount of funds to keep everybody alive while the invasion is happening. I think it's 50 gold coins that you have to bank. Then every player gets an individual goal that they have to complete. And these are widely different. Sometimes they're very synergistic. Sometimes it's like, just get to the end of these 2 tracks. And so study, the little book track that's at the bottom of the board and the farmer track. Get to the end of those and you're good. Or hoard enough gold that you still have a certain number of gold at the end, or enough victory points in goods. Sometimes these require you to give up stuff. You have a whole extra board of citizens that you have to fill before the end of the game. You have to pay a tax every turn, and if you fail, you lose. Then there are events that trigger. Sometimes they're good and give you things, but most often they are bad, and you have to pay an additional citizen. You have to kill off 3 of your citizens out of your bag at the end of the turn, and that can be devastating to your strategy if you've been playing with a very lean bag of citizens. And somehow you have to do all of these things, trigger everything, fill all these buckets before the invaders come at the end of the 16th turn. This is hard. This is not an easy game, not an easy way to play, but it is fun. I'm fascinated at how they've turned this competitive experience and used the same mechanisms of the game, but turned it into a cooperative that really feels strong, and when you achieve something, you feel like you've done something good to make it happen. When you first start your engine moving, it doesn't feel like you're going to be able to do this at all. And the 2 times we've played, although we haven't won, we've come close enough that victory, we can smell it. We can smell the victory on this. And I think it's doable if you can really work together. They give you additional actions in here as well, where you can send workers to other people's boards. You can trigger actions that are on other people's boards. You can help each other out in really interesting ways, but it's still really tricky. And I really like this. I don't own Orléans, but playing the cooperative version makes me really want it. Orléans
but it's
Invasion.
A very different game.
Does it feel like a different game?
No, it is a different game. I really feel like it is.
It is. I mean, but it uses the same mechanisms. I mean, it triggers the same...
It does, but I could see someone liking one and not liking the other.
It's possible. I think I prefer it as a co-op game.
Really?
I really liked it.
Interesting.
I love Orleans, and I love the cooperative game. It's very good and very much involved, but I don't know that I would... Now, it's not better than the competitive game. Have you played the cooperative one yet, Suzanne?
I haven't, and I have to admit, I am not typically a cooperative game fan. So
That's true. I played
but
games
it's
with you.
Orléans, and I love Orléans so much that this one's pretty. I'm excited to try this. I own it. I just haven't managed to get it to the table yet.
It's fun. You should try it. But now we want to try the other. There's other modules as well for the competitive game, and no one wants to move on to those because we want to beat the co-op game first.
Those aren't as good as the co-op game, actually, Eric.
Okay.
The modules in the second expansion are vastly superior. So I'm going to keep with this deck building, Ascension Gift of the Elements. This is the 11th expansion for Ascension. So if you don't like Ascension, I don't think this is going to be changing your mind anytime soon.
Okay.
If you have played Ascension, you'll know that in one of the expansions, they added events. In another expansion, they added cards that could be transformed into other cards. You bought it, and then you could upgrade it into something else. Well, this combines those. You now have events, and you can take the event and upgrade it into a card in your deck. It also has a lot of cool ways to get rid of cards out of your deck, to cull your deck, to burn cards, to trash cards. So if you like that sort of thing, if you're like the person who likes to have that nice thin deck, this will be an expansion you like. Nothing special, but a good solid expansion. It's Ascension Gift of the Elements.
How do you play that with all the other expansions? I mean, how do you pick which expansions you play at any given game?
So what I do when I get the new ones, I usually play them by themselves because you can. They're standalone games. I might mix it with some of the stuff from the last expansion because usually they work well in a two. They pair them together so they work well. And then I throw everything in together in one big giant pile, and then I just go play it on the app because the app's better. I honestly don't know why I'm keeping the board game. I play it when it comes. Every time I get a new one, I play it. Woohoo! And then I'm like, oh, the app's so much easier. It's the one app that has almost killed the actual physical game for me.
Interesting.
Is the app updated to this point?
No, it's like several expansions behind, but it doesn't matter because when I get like a new one, I'll be like, oh, let's see. Oh, look, they added a new one to the app too. Yay! I don't know. It's kind of exciting all the time.
Yeah, they're doing a really good job of keeping the app up to date with expansions as they come. So they're lagging, but they are consistently supporting and updating that app.
And considering it's one of the first board game apps that was out, it still
absolutely
holds its own amongst many of the newer ones.
It does.
Now, I remember, Tom, when you first started getting a couple of expansions for Ascension, you were saying that you wanted to add it all into one big pile, even though the designer said, no, you really shouldn't do that because it's going to dilute everything. Are you still playing with one big pile, or are you keeping to just one or two expansions at a time?
Those designers don't know what they're talking about. I do what I want. I'm a man of freedom. But yes, I do play with everything.
Yeah.
So when I play like on the app, I look at the pile. The deck is like 900 cards at this point. And I'm like, well, this card works really well if you have the matching card. Yeah, that's not going to happen.
That's never going to happen, yeah.
Have you played any apps lately, Suzanne?
How funny you should ask, Tom. In fact, I have played a few apps lately, including the brand new Onirim board game app from Asmodee Digital. For people who haven't tried it, Onirim is actually really a solo game. I mean, in the box, they have rules for 1 to 2 players to play cooperatively, but honestly, it's a solo play game. And Onirim is a game in which you are in this dreamscape, and you are trying to escape by finding the 8 Oniric doors. And they're really just 2 doors in red, blue, brown, and green. And you do this by going through this deck that has cards that match the color of the doors, and they have 3 symbols on them. It's either a sun, a moon, or a key. So you're going to get this hand of cards, and you're just trying to lay cards out in groups of 3 that match the color of a door. So 3 red cards in a row. The real trick there is that the symbols can never match next to each other. So you can never have 2 suns next to each other or 2 keys next to each other. So you're going through this deck just trying to pull cards and lay them out in order to open all those doors. But of course, it's not quite that simple. There are nightmare cards in the deck as well. And when these nightmares come out, they demand a sacrifice in order to let you move on. So then you have to have the choice of giving up 5 cards from your deck, all the cards remaining in your hand, or one of the doors that you've already unlocked, or a key card. And that's a pretty big sacrifice because you lose the game by being unable to open the doors, which is essentially you burning through this deck of cards. It's a really simple mechanically game, but for, a solo play kind of solitaire game, it's really well suited for that. It's quick and easy to play, but it still provides some challenge and some choice as you go through it. Well, Asmodee Digital has released this app version of it, and it is stunning. I've really got to give it up to Asmodee Digital lately with Potion Explosion and Colt Express and Mysterium. They are doing a bang-up job on these board game app conversions. And Onirim is right in line. And this is a game so well suited to app form. It's solitaire. It's quick to play. It's all a deck of cards. So you've got this app. It plays only the base game right now. None of the little mini expansions in the second edition are included yet. But it's also only 99 cents for this great solitaire on your phone, quick playing, beautifully implemented game.
Wow.
I know, right? It's such a bargain. I was actually really surprised when I heard that price point. So Onirim, the app version, I've had a ton of fun with it. I'm at about a 25% win rate right now, so I've been losing a lot, but it's a blast to play. I'm really glad that I've got it now. Have you guys ever played it? Have you played the solitaire card game itself?
I played the physical version, but not the app. I did recall seeing the announcement for the app and being mildly curious because it would probably get more play that way. It seems like a really nice, quick experience that you could pull out while you're waiting for something else and easily get a game out. I'm not always willing to do like a full round of Ticket to Ride or something on an app when I have a small amount of time to play.
Yeah, it's perfect for that. And honestly, the biggest downfall for me of Onirim, the card game, is you do a lot of deck shuffling, and that's a big deck. And, that one of the advantages of the app is it does all the shuffling for you.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I'm standing firm against Z trying to shove this down everyone's throats.
Oh, I'm on Team Z here. No way. Team Z on this one for sure.
See, here's my thing. I would like to say it's a solitaire game, and I don't play solitaire games, but I keep playing Mansions of Madness and Gloomhaven solitaire, so I'm starting to feel like a hypocrite.
You are morphing into a solo gamer.
It won't happen. I won't.
Fight it all you want.
Speaking of Gloomhaven,
Eric,
the new Kickstarter has started, and I haven't yet pulled the trigger, but I think I'm going to.
What, for Gloomhaven?
Yeah.
21 pounds of game.
Oh, my goodness.
It's a really good deal for $100, though, that the Kickstarter is. That's not bad for... I mean, I know people like $100 a game. Yeah, but you're paying $100 for, 100 hours. I can't really fault... That's a pretty good deal there.
Okay, you talked me into it. Anyway, there goes the tangent. All right, well, since Suzanne is here and we were talking apps a little bit, I got to play the Tokaido app. This is a new one from FunForge, and if you're familiar with Tokaido, it's a set collection game and a worker movement, not really a placement, but a path game where you're working your way down a path. It's a journey. And you're trying to make the journey as lucrative as possible, as interesting as possible. And the more interesting your journey, the better you will do, the more points you will have achieved by the end. It's a very pretty game. It's always praised for the art style. And the app definitely pushes in that direction. In fact, they went so far as to make it even more beautiful. Really play up the art style of this. One of the aspects of the game is that you are creating panoramas. You're making pictures. You stop and see something pretty, and you paint a picture in the game. And in the game, you just sort of get a card or a tile that represents one piece of that panorama. But in the app, they now paint it for you, and you can pan back and forth and look at it. They've done 3D renderings of the characters, so you're moving along this path and visiting the different spaces that you visit start to highlight and saturate with color as you approach them. when you visit a shop, it really feels like an RPG, like you're playing a Legend of Zelda game where the shopkeeper's like, here are the 3 things I've got for you. In the game, it's just 3 cards that have been turned up. But in the app, they really play it up like, here's a location you're visiting. Try these different food samples, and which one do you want to eat today? And I'm still not a giant fan of the game to begin with. Tokaido is a fun game. It's solid. It's very accessible. It didn't really push all my buttons, so it's not one that I was excited about, and this app doesn't necessarily change that. But the presentation of this is so solid, and they took what the praise of the game was, the physical game, and really play that up in the app. And I think that's a stellar thing to do. So thumbs up for this app presentation of Tokaido.
I think it's hilarious that you're talking about the board game like it's trash. You're like, yeah, well, the board game, you just make these panoramas. Yeah, they're beautiful, whatever. But the app, so the app must be amazing because the board game looks phenomenal.
Yeah. Well,
so the app must be even that much more amazing.
It's very pretty.
One of my favorite things about the app is, they have those animated characters that go from location to location, and it really gives you that feel of that journey, and it's so beautiful. But I get impatient. I want to get going. So they have a fast AI option where you can click it, and all the characters move extra fast.
Ooh.
But the animations remain. So then all of a sudden, instead of this beautiful, lovely journey, now you've got these characters like running full bore between locations. It's highly entertaining to watch at that point.
I have to find that checkbox.
I always choose the fast AI
Always.
in a game.
Me too.
All right, one of my favorite kid games in the past 5 years easily has been Dr. Eureka. Dr. Eureka was such a great combo of dexterity and thinking, right? It's not just, you're pouring balls from one test tube to another. And so it's like a great game for kids and adults because the adults can probably outthink the kids, but the kids are way better at the dexterity part. It's a good thing. And Blue Orange is taking this genre and they're making it their genre, this mix of dexterity and thinking. And they're actually coming out with several games. And so one I'm talking about is Go Gelato.
Okay.
I like ice cream a lot. So this is an easy thing to talk about. But in this one, you have ice cream cones, the little sugar ones that you get at the store. And there's 4 of them, blue, pink, yellow, green. And in the pink, yellow, green ones, you place a ball. It looks like a ping pong ball, but it's a rubbery ball.
Okay.
A little squishy ball. And then you flip a card over and it shows you a combination of how you need to have these cones. So I might need to have the yellow ball in the blue cone and the pink ball in the green cone and the blue cone on top of those. And so you need to move them back and forth without touching the balls, just from cone to cone. And so you have to think, okay, to move this one here, I need to move that one here. And it's still that dexterity thing. You're doing it as fast as you can. The components are amazing. Again, I like to point out, I like ice cream. And it just fits together in a really fun way. It's just as good as Dr. Eureka. I'm keeping them both. That's
Ooh, that
Go
sounds
Gelato.
awesome. I can't wait to try that one. I also like ice cream.
Yeah, I figured Suzanne and I are dessert
Aficionados. Yes.
Yeah, that's
Connoisseurs.
why Vegas was not good for us in that method.
As we have our little dessert off, loading our trays up.
I don't think I've actually eaten any dessert like in the last 2 weeks because I'm still like thinking about Vegas. Like, okay, you covered yourself for the year, Vassal. But yeah, this game is just, the pieces are great quality. Blue Orange is just really, their stuff is so good these days. Mm-hmm. I'm just so happy with what they're doing for family games. I mean, I know Eric is hubba, but
what?
I think if I love Haba, I really do, like Eric does. But I think if you said I have a new Kids Blue Orange game and a new Haba game, Tom, which one would you want? Without sight unseen, I would pick the Blue Orange one at this point.
Okay.
Interesting. Well, going in a different direction from extravagant components, I wanted to talk about Exit the Game, the Secret Lab.
Wait, are you going to spoil this?
No. Oh, my goodness. I would never do that. But I think I can talk a little bit about what people can expect without giving away too many details.
So how did you get your hand on this? This isn't out yet.
Eric, I have it.
Oh.
What?
Oh, sorry, Eric. Everyone has it, don't you know?
Yeah.
Okay, please continue.
Wah, wah, wah. Tom, our beautiful plan came together so well.
We made Eric cry. No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Don't. Please, enjoy. Tell me about this game that you have.
Yeah, I shall. It's so wonderful. So exit the game. With the popularity of escape rooms nowadays, or adventure rooms, some people are calling them, we've been seeing some board games come out around this. And Exit the Game is a series of these room escape games from Cosmos. And the Secret Lab is one I got to play recently. I didn't really know what to expect because it's in a very, very small, lightweight box. And it's very inexpensive. It's only $15 at retail in the US. So Exit the Game, it is. They set up a scenario, and it's essentially a room scenario, and the goal of the game is to solve the puzzles of the room and escape that room. When you open the box, and again, this isn't spoiling anything, I wouldn't want to do that for anybody, really the components, there's a rules sheet, which is basically a sheet that just tells you how to open this deck of cards you get and how to lay them out, and then tells you not to look at anything before you're supposed to. Mm-hmm. And then it comes with maybe one or two little thin cardboard components like that you can punch out, and then maybe another puzzle pamphlet. And that is it. A deck of cards, a little pamphlet, and maybe a few cardboard pieces. And they basically say, good luck. And I mean, really, even figuring out how you interact with these things is almost part of the game. And what's going to happen in the Secret Lab, again, I don't think this is spoiling, you end up in this room that's laboratory themed. And I thought it was very clever. This is designed by Marcus and Inca Brand. And really the game is mostly in this pamphlet, but you leverage this deck of cards. And you split it up into an answers, a riddle, and a clue set of cards. And all the puzzles are coded with a unique symbol so that you can align the answers, the riddles, and the clues if you need them. So you're going to go through all these puzzles, and when you think you have an answer, you can look at one of the cards, and they've created this clever key system where it'll ask you, where do you see this symbol? And you look at this, you kind of cross-reference the pamphlet and this card that you've now just discovered, and then that will guide you to a specific card that then says you got it right or you got it wrong. So there's really no way for you to look at this answer card, that key card, and know or guess. There's just too much information on it. There's too many symbols, and really either you get the right one and you get it right, or you don't. And I thought that was an incredibly clever system. For so few components and simple components, they give you a fairly rich experience. And ultimately, everything is very much about like discovering codes. But the way you go about it, for the lightweight components, there is some really clever little bits in here. We played with 6 players, and one of them was a complete non-gamer, and she rocked it, and she totally loved it. And I mean, honestly, the other thing I wanted to make sure people knew is that they are not reusable.
Right.
There is component destruction as part of the mechanisms in the game. So, but honestly, for $15, for the amount of fun we had and for the cleverness of the game, Exit the Game, I really, really enjoyed it. I can't wait to play the other ones.
Yeah, I opened it up, and I haven't opened the whole thing up because the one pack of cards says "Do not open."
Yes.
And we've been playing through another set of escape games with my family. The one with the keys. That's Escape the Game, I think, right?
Escape Room, the game, the one from
Escape
Spin
Room,
Master.
the game. Well, that came out with some expansions.
Oh,
so we've been playing through those.
Yep.
And the 6th one, we played, and my wife was around. Normally she's not. I usually play it with the kids, and we're like, "Come on, join us!" And she joined us. And after we were done, I now realize that we have an addict to this.
Really?
So, yeah, because she loves puzzles, right? And she was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And then I told her about puzzle rooms, which she didn't really know existed. She's like, maybe we should go to one. I'm like, well, we're poor. So let's keep playing these ones in a box.
These are significantly less expensive than taking the family to an escape room, yes.
Yeah, but I think I'm going to have to take them to an escape room, because once the kids heard that this thing existed, they're like, that sounds amazing. I'm like, yeah, it is.
Yes.
But I'm really excited about these. I'm excited about the 3. It just, I don't know. I'm going to have to play it. Suzanne, it looks like there's not a lot of game in that, in the box.
I get it, and I can't say much more without like giving it all away. So it's really this is a tough game to talk about on a podcast. I'm so glad I picked it.
How long did your game take?
Our game took what I can tell you is our game took 65 minutes from start to finish. We did time it, and our group did not use any clues.
Wow!
So we were pretty proud of ourselves, but I won't say it was easy.
Do you feel like it could be played with 3 people pretty easily?
I do. I do think you can play 3 to 6. I would say my only big problem with the game was that because you really just have a deck of cards and this fairly small pamphlet, you had to pass it around a lot. And so if 2 or 3 people at one end of the table were really working on a puzzle, the people at the other end of the table were kind of just waiting their turn to get a look at it, which is a little inconvenient.
Yeah,
so in some ways, 3 might be better.
These escape room games in a box don't seem to work as well for the bigger number of players for that reason.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
In an actual escape room, people are running around the room looking at stuff.
Yep.
Well, either way, I'm excited about this. You and I will enjoy this.
And I'll just be here in the corner waiting for that. I am interested to compare the full versions of Exit and Unlock, because they seem to have similar approaches to this whole thing. And seeing which one does it more efficiently and more cleanly will be interesting.
Yeah, it'll make an interesting comparison since I haven't played Unlock, so I want to try that for sure.
Yep.
Well, I'm pretty sure Unlock is not destructible. So
that one appears to be
that
reusable,
advantage, I think. Well, we'll see. I'm curious about this because the box is like really clear on it. Like, this game, you will destroy stuff. I'm like, ooh, that you have Vassal on board. Mm-hmm. You have my scissors. Okay. Well, one of the things about our show that's changed is that we no longer have hordes of contributors, which is sad because, we like them but they're going to go to different podcasts. You'll hear about that, I'm sure. But one has stuck around, and we've expanded him and gave him more time, and that is Geoff Engelstein, who said he will occasionally tailor his segment to our guest host.
So this one's about pie.
Well, let's listen.
3, 2, 1, go.
It's time for Game Tech with Geoff Engelstein, where we find out how games really work.
We just had a big party over at our house, and lots of people brought cakes and pies. We all like pie, right? Unfortunately, we had a lot left over, so I've been thinking a lot about the pie in the refrigerator and how I should not eat it. To distract myself, I've been doing some thinking about a technique my parents used whenever my sister and I had a disagreement over dividing up dessert, be it a piece of cake or pie or a candy bar. My mother would make me divide the candy bar in half, and my sister would choose which piece to take. So I was incentivized to make the division as even as possible, so I got as much as possible. Now, I thought my mom was pretty clever for coming up with this system, and I still think she's pretty clever, but alas, this was not her idea. Our parents are never as clever as we think they are, a fact which my kids enjoy pointing out as they get older. So this is called the cut and choose method, and references to it go back thousands of years. A form of it is actually described in the Bible in Genesis. Abraham and Lot are arguing over who should get which land. Abraham picks a spot and says he's dividing the land in two, the land to the east of that spot and the land to the west. And he gives Lot the choice of which one he wants, and they part peacefully. Now, economists and decision theorists call cut and choose a, quote, envy-free method of division. There is no reason for either person to think that they got a worse deal. The person that divides the pie should try to make it as even as possible, and the person of choosing, of course, will pick the piece that they think is the best. Unless, of course, you're me and always have to do the dividing. I am a lousy divider, so my sister always ended up with the better piece, but that's another story. Now, there have been several games that use the cut and choose mechanic. The oldest that I'm aware of is 2001's San Marco from designers Alan Moon and Aaron Weisblum. Now, this uses a really pure version of cut and choose. Even though it plays with 3 or 4, one player divides a stack of goods and another player selects between the two stacks. The other players sit by and wait for future rounds to get their chance to divide or choose. San Marco has a variety of goods that get divided, and they're worth different things to different players. This is what makes it interesting. It's difficult to judge exactly how much each pile is worth to each player, and the value is somewhat depending on what goods come up in the future. So, there's always an element of risk. If this variety didn't exist, if there was always a precise value for each commodity, the decision would become simple and the game would not be that much fun. Economists have studied methods to divide goods where each person values things differently. And a key factor there is information. How much do you know about how the other person values things? For example, let's say that Suzanne and Eric are splitting a pie. Half of it is apple and half is cherry. Suzanne likes cherry pie and Eric prefers apple. Now, if Suzanne is dividing the pie and knows that Eric prefers apple, she will make one piece all apple and the other all cherry. And in this case, both of them will end up with their best outcome. But if she doesn't know what type Eric prefers, her best bet is to make each piece half cherry and half apple. In that case, they are both somewhat happy, but not as happy as they could be. The difference was the information that they had access to. So disguising that information is important for the game designer. Now, what happens when we get to 3 or more players? Is there a method that guarantees that all 3 or 4 or 5 will be envy-free? Short answer is yes. Long answer is that as you get to more people, the algorithms and methods get more complex. But here's one system for 3 people. The divider breaks the pie up into 3 pieces. Then the other 2 players each secretly select a piece they want. If they both pick different pieces, then you're done. They both get what they chose and the divider gets what's left. If they both pick the same piece, then the divider gets to select which of the 2 unchosen pieces she wants. Then the 2 remaining pieces are combined back together, and the 2 players left do a classic cut and choose, which we know is envy-free. Now, there's another neat method out there which I can't do justice to in an audio medium called the Stromquist moving knife procedure. Suffice to say that it involves 3 players, a referee, and 4 knives that move around until one player shouts to stop. So there's a game waiting to be made. Now, there are a few games that involve dividing things up for multiple players. In Piece O' Cake, recently released as New York Slice, one player divides slices of cake or pizza into multiple pieces, one for each player, and then players pick which one they want. Now, the division is hard in this case as the different slices that make up a piece cannot be rearranged. This seems like it would put the divider at a decided disadvantage, but as all the players must be the divider at points, it evens out. The game Animals on Board has a more free-floating cut-and-choose mechanic, as players either divide up a group of animals or select a group and drop out of the round. But it still has that same flavor as you try to figure out which animals would benefit your opponents the most and break up those groups. Now, your New York Slice has a similar set-collecting feel, which admirably does the job of making things worth different amounts to different players. And while this list is by no means complete, in general, I was surprised at how few games there are that use this cut-and-choose mechanism. This is definitely a way to make a game easy to learn with built-in tough choices and should be on every designer's shortlist. And I have completely failed to distract myself from that pie in the fridge. This is Geoff Engelstein with Game Tech.
I want to know what the Stromquist moving knife procedure involves. It sounds like someone could lose a finger.
Oh my gosh, it sounds terrifying.
Okay, I'm going to say that I've never actually heard of that methodology before of the everyone chooses, but if 2 people choose the same thing, then they're out. It almost sounds too complicated.
Yeah, I like the simpler I split, you choose thing. But the multiple knives, that's a whole new level of excitement.
I will agree, though, easily one of the most underused mechanisms in gaming. I love it. I really do. And yet, there's probably like less than 10 games that use it.
Yeah. It's so much fun. In fact, I played New York Slice just a little bit ago, and I wish I'd heard this segment before I played, because he's talked about that knowledge and what you know about the other. I could have made better choices, and because I lost New York Slice when I played it the other day. So, but what Geoff fails to realize here is this no envy solution that really only matters if you don't get what you want. Now, see, in this scenario, I like both cherry and apple pie. So Eric and if I'm cutting a cherry and a pie, I'm just going to point and go, "Hey, Eric, look over there." And then I'm going to grab the pie and then I'm going to run the other direction and get the whole thing. And hey, I'm happy.
But previous to this, Eric and I have already worked it out that while you're saying that, I've already taken the pie. And then he and I will split it because we did that Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure time machine thing.
Darn it. Foiled.
This is a fascinating scenario.
But actually, it's key lime pie. I just want to clarify that.
That's acceptable. That's acceptable. Very, very
As
acceptable.
long as it's the world's best.
You know, I really wish that Ted had made a dual version of New York Slice. One that was pies and one that was pizzas. Because I like the pizza theme a lot. I think I like pie a little bit better.
Oh, heck yeah. Geoff knew what he was talking about when he picked this theme for his talk for sure. Pie is the best. And anybody who doesn't agree, well, they can talk to me online about it, and I will prove it to them.
You have a pie proof?
Yeah, pick any saying that has cake in it and substitute pie and it works.
See, Tom, this is
Let
why
them
we get
eat
along.
Pie.
Yep.
I have my pie and eat it too.
I'm using that one.
Right. Okay, well, it's time to get to Tales of Gaming.
What kind of tale, Tom?
Well, that's the thing. From now on, folks, one of the things that I've been thinking about was if we tell you what kind of tale it is ahead of time, you know that maybe that twist is coming. So now you will never know.
Now you're always expecting a twist?
Well, no, I'm just saying you don't know how it's going to end.
Sure. Someone online complained that the voice I use for the tales of horror sounds like the Count from Sesame Street, so I thought maybe I'd do it like Igor instead. Gather round, children. No, I won't do that. And now, hastily assembled from experiences of listeners just like you, the Dice Tower presents Tales of Gaming. Gather round, children. Recently, I purchased the new version of Mission Red Planet. I'm a sucker for the little plastic astronauts, and the game was recommended to me several times, as we often need a game that can facilitate 5 to 6 players. After playing it a few times at home and learning the basics, I decided to keep it in my collection and even ordered sleeves so I could take it to our local meetup. This meetup is hosted in a diner, so I tend to sleeve any game I take to avoid damage from syrup, greasy hands, or rogue spills. That being said, everyone does their best to treat our games with respect, and generally there are no issues. Excited about my new game, I decided that it would be fine to bring it out one time before it had been sleeved. I'd keep it with myself instead of just placing it on the table for others to play, and therefore I could somewhat control how it was treated. Later in the evening, I decided to set up the game and ask for players. Quickly, 4 additional players joined in, and I was just about to start teaching without filling the 6th spot when Bob came by and awkwardly started to hover. As one of the organizers, I quickly engaged him and asked him if he'd like to play, to which he didn't respond. However, he did take a seat, so I handed him playing pieces and launched into the explanation. During the explanation, Bob would frustratingly disengage and play on his phone, at one point playing us all some theme music, which incidentally was the opening credits to Star Wars. I didn't know Bob, so calmly I asked him to turn the music off and continued explaining the game. He didn't seem too upset and happily sat there drinking his recently delivered milkshake. The game began, and everyone started placing their astronauts into the loading bays of spaceships as cards were revealed. Bob looked confused, but kept laying down cards, so we continued on. He played his 1 the first round, his 2 the second, his 3 the third. I politely reminded the table that they could play their cards in any order, and we continued. Bob retreated back into drinking his milkshake. On the following turn, Bob moved some of his astronauts from the moon down to the surface of the planet. He completed this action with some laser sounds and a flourish. This flourish, however, had unintended consequences. His milkshake was shaken and spilled violently all over the table and the game. Bob quickly jumped up, running back to the kitchen, yelling, "Can I get another milkshake? Mine's spilled!" No concern for the table, the game, or anything else. I have a new copy of the game now, and every time I play it, I still cringe when I hear anyone say the word milkshake.
I think my favorite part of this is that when he spilled the milkshake, he's like, "Oh, I spilled the milkshake. I should get another one." You know, that's the tragedy here, is that he lost a milkshake, man.
That's awful. Now, have you guys lost game? I have lost games to spilled beverages before. Have you?
Lost a game? No.
I had a water come on my Settlers game, which warped all of the cards, but they're still playable. And since, the Settlers cards are just resources, it's really not a big deal. It's just a little wobbly.
It's a little wobbly?
They don't stack well anymore. They're sort of, teetery when you pile up all the weak cards.
Yeah, I don't know how much I've spilled stuff on games. I've seen it happen a little bit, but usually it comes off pretty much everything. A milkshake, though, sounds a little bit more difficult.
That's tragic. Mission Red Planet is such a fun game, too. Ugh.
I want to know, though, did he get the other milkshake?
The world needs to know.
Mine spilled. Help me, please.
What kind of milkshake?
Real ice cream. We have to make sure it was, hand-dipped real ice cream, too.
All right.
Well, maybe it was a high-quality milkshake. You can't just waste those.
This is somehow the dessert show all of a sudden, right?
Welcome to the Dessert Tower.
Ooh, I want to be part of that podcast. Tom, I want to be part of that podcast.
Dice Tower Dessert. Mm-hmm. I always said, if I didn't review games, I'd be reviewing food, but I would also probably have a different physique.
Well, you are working through the various meals of the day, so you just have to get through a dinner show, and then you can get to dessert. So you're really only 2 shows away.
Oh, so close. But then I have to do the vegetable show, or my dad says I can't get to dessert. We're taking this analogy too far. Let's get to questions.
Tom.
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 Hi, Tom.
How do you pack your hats for safe travel?
If you were stranded on a desert island with one of the aliens from Cosmic Encounter, which one would it be?
Tom, gamers want to know. Is that Eric's real voice?
And now, the Dice Tower will authoritatively, definitely, possibly, maybe, answer your questions.
Tom, which way to the game library?
Rich is asking what our thoughts are when it comes to luck versus strategy in board games. Do we look for a balance when we review games? Does this factor into our enjoyment of a game? So Rich was listening to episode 499, just a couple weeks ago, where we say in Flamme Rouge there is too much luck. There are certainly very tight, highly strategic board games out there that reward players for planning in advance and punish those who don't. Uwe Rosenberg games jump to mind. And those are certainly one type of experience, and there is nothing wrong with those other than having a tendency to be a little dry. But on the other hand, says Rich, there are games that rely heavily on luck, sometimes too much so. I find my personal favorite games strike a good balance between the two. Alien Frontiers has been a favorite of mine for a long time because I feel it has a good balance. While not a board game, the game Hearthstone is another favorite of mine because of the mix of strategy and luck. You build a deck of cards, you try to plan for different scenarios, and you increase your odds of winning as best as you can, but if you have particularly bad luck, you might not win every game.
The thing with luck and strategy is we could fill a whole episode with this, really.
Yeah.
Talking about this. It sounds like something Geoff would talk about over on Ludology.
And he has.
Well, yes, he has. And does luck factor into my enjoyment? For me, I don't mind luck much at all, really, depending on how much it affects the game corresponding to the length of the game. So if a game's super lucky and super short, I have a lot higher tolerance for it. If a game has luck scattered throughout it and it's long, I don't mind. But if a game has a few moments of extreme luck in a long game, I really dislike that.
Where it can really just totally destroy your plans?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I like to have some luck in a game. The totally dry, no luck stuff, I mean, I can appreciate that style of game. And I will certainly play them occasionally, but I do like to have some aspect that I don't know what's going to happen. I can't pre-plan the entire game. And have some aspect that, okay, here are the market goods that are available this turn. Oh, I didn't expect that to work out this way this round. Okay, I need to adjust a little bit. I like having at least some aspect like that forces me to stay on my toes and not get too complacent with my strategy. But like you said, something that can totally destroy what you've been working for 2 hours to build because of a particular flip of a tile or a roll of the dice is pretty frustrating. So I try to avoid that sort of game. But if it's a quick, light thing, sure, roll away.
Yeah, and I always think of luck. The other way of thinking about luck is how the randomization element of the game falls in your favor or not, right? Because to me, if there isn't some kind of randomizing element to a game, whether it's a shuffled deck or a die roll at some point, it's almost not a game. It's really more of a puzzle. I think even the most heavy strategic games have some element of randomization in them, and I associate randomization with luck. And so similarly, length of game, complexity, how much you've invested, things like that really matter. But to me, luck is an essential part of every game on some level.
Well, there you go. That was our quick answer that could be really expanded into a much longer thing. So we won't. Kirk says, what's your views on the current trend of the very high production value games like Scythe and Mechs vs. Minions? Are they good for the hobby, or do they set the bar so high that the little guys can't hope to compete? For example, Terraforming Mars is a wonderful game, but at its price point, there are a number of games with better artwork and components, like Mechs vs. Minions at $75. How are other game producers going to compete with that?
They're not.
Yeah, that's the thing, Kirk. They don't need to. That's an anomaly. That's a game made by a company that's worth in over $1 billion. So that company can do what they want. They're not making tons. They're not going to drive other people out of business. However, and I'm not trying to pick on Stronghold here, but
you will.
Yeah, but I'm not doing it in a fun way like I normally do. Terraforming Mars and Scythe, those are very comparable things, right? They're both done by small publishers. They both decided where to put the effort, and Stonemaier Games put that effort into production. They did. Now, granted, they had a Kickstarter, so they were able to get some front-ended money, but he's still putting that kind of production into games that he is not kickstarting, that he's just doing pre-orders for. He might make less money on them in the long run. I don't know.
Right.
And also, to be fair to Stronghold, they didn't have complete choices on all the production values of this game because it was Frick's games, but then who cares? So then we'll just talk about Frick's. Why did Frick's make those decisions?
Sure.
And the fact is, most companies cut corners on production, and they need to stop, okay? But you got to cut some corners, right? You can't put out, these, you need to make some money on these games. But you're right. Terraforming Mars, if it had better artwork and better components, it would be easily one of the greatest games in the last 10 years. Easily. As it is, I love the game. I think it's fantastic. But it's obviously not as good production-wise as many other games.
And I think we're seeing publishers realize that, though, Tom. I mean, right? I mean, even just at Gamma this year when we were all there, one of the trends I think a lot of us noticed is that publishers, even very, very small publishers, are investing in the component quality of their games, realizing that the bar has been raised. And if they're just going to stay on par, they have to lift themselves with it.
That's what I mean, though. You can do this. This is not the small publishers are being priced out. No, small publishers can make good stuff. You can figure out how to do it. It's possible.
Yes. But, I mean, have we gotten a little too picky about some of this stuff?
No.
If you look at the production value from 5-10 years ago, Terraforming Mars is well above that bar. It's just there are a couple of annoying aspects of the production that could have gone a different way in the production. They could have used a little bit heavier materials. They could have come up with a way to keep things organized. Maybe it's a secret plan to keep the aftermarket organization market industry still in line.
The conspiracy.
There could be a deal here. We don't know.
But Eric, yes, the bar has been raised, and the bar should be raised. I'm sorry.
Yes.
It used to be Days of Wonder was an anomaly. The way they made their games, now their games are the norm. And
Right.
I can't tell you how happy I am. Look at Renegade Games. They're not a big publisher, but their games look fantastic. I could go on about this for a long time.
It just seems like we're being less forgiving of any production missteps these days. It's I guess you have to find something to criticize when you've got a game that mechanically works so well. There's things to criticize there. I guess it doesn't bother me quite as much, and we expect perfection at this point as far as production goes.
I think you have to be careful. We're not expecting perfection, but I don't necessarily need to see the owner's pet on a card.
All right. Well, Jamie writes in saying, I recently played Raiders of the North Sea, and I rather disliked the way the game ends. Once a player triggers an endgame condition, every player, including the player who triggered the endgame, gets one more turn. It bothers me that inevitably some players get more turns than others. Do you know why designers do this? I know this game isn't the only example of this, and it always rubs me wrong. Well, to me, I think it really depends on whether you can see it coming or not. I know exactly what Jamie's talking about, and a lot of games actually specifically work against this, right? They say play until everybody's had equal turns. And, sure, it's possible that some games do it randomly or at a whim or because they haven't thought it through. But I honestly think for the most part, if the game has enough runway that you can see the end coming and that you should be planning for it, I think that's just part of the game, is gauging the end game and making sure that you're prepared for it.
But then, of course, the flip side of this is when you don't know it's coming. And one of these what says everybody gets the same number of turns. So you play until the player to the right of the start player goes. And then if that's the player that triggers the end game, the other three players go, oh, man, I don't get a chance to react to that move. And because you were the last player, well, then you can just end it knowing that no one gets to counter your final move. Whereas if the designer has allowed one more turn to everyone, then everyone knows, all right, this is it. This is your last turn. And so you can all react to whatever caused that end game, knowing that you are going to get one more move in the game. And I kind of prefer that. The minor switch here is whether the player who triggered gets another turn or not. And many games just give that player, some sort of point bonus. All right, here's your reward. You triggered endgame. That's it. You're done. And so you have to think twice before you trigger endgame, because this is all you're going to get to do, rather than getting one more turn at the end of the game.
It's different in different games. My opinion on it depends on how the game plays. Like, I really like Ticket to Ride. I really like how somebody can end the game there. And if you're taking forever to get your trains on the board, that's your fault.
Right.
But I dislike it a little bit in Dominion. I mean, this is like a 0.5% caring, right? But going first in Dominion is an advantage.
Yes.
It's a slight advantage. But as soon as someone draws that last card, game ends. Boom.
Mm-hmm. Have you played with anybody who plays with virtual provinces at the end of the game?
No, have you?
Yeah, a few groups I've played with, they make sure everyone has an even number of turns, and if you could buy a province in your last turn, they let you buy a virtual province, so that it's fair for everyone once someone has triggered the end game. If the provinces have run out and there are still players that have not had an equal number of turns, they can still buy provinces.
Oh, that's interesting. I think I'll play that way from now on. Huh.
It evens out that particular. Eric
has converted me.
Okay. All right, Dayan writes to say, apart from having the same characteristic of being able to play the board game always and in any situation, and asking anyone to join us, do you think that board game geeks as a whole share some other important psychological trait? Are we all more analytic, or deductive in our everyday life out of the board games? Are we maybe better in teaching the others anything since we do teaching all the time? Can you think of some other characteristic that is common? Is there a relation with a profession that board gamers choose more often? In my gaming group, most of the people are IT professionals, for example. I think that's common amongst our hobby group, for sure.
But I think that's more the people you hang out with in general than a trait of the hobby.
I would say no. Right? I don't think there is some psychological thing that makes people play games. I think people just like to play games in general, and I don't know, I'm afraid to kind of pigeonhole people. Gamers tend to be smarter than other people. Gamers tend to, I don't know if I want to say that.
Yeah. We all come at it from different angles, too. There's different aspects of the hobby that people enjoy. So we just talked about the luck versus strategy debate. And some people really enjoy the luck of the die. And that's the exciting point for them. And then others despise that aspect and really want the drier, puzzly games.
Yeah, I mean, I think clearly that the other key element is that we all have excellent taste in hobbies, right?
Yeah, well, that's really the only thing.
Okay, that's the safe answer. You're right. Everyone has chosen a correct hobby. All right, last question today is from Laura. She says, when did you introduce board games to your children? Her daughter's interested in the boxes, but she's not sure she's ready even for simple games like Candyland. What games did you start easing your kids into the hobby and when? And they're going to Miami and found out that there's a Cool Stuff location only 20 minutes from the airport.
What?
That's Cool Stuff in Hollywood. So if you only had a few minutes in Cool Stuff, what would you do with it? Well, let's go to the kid question first. And for me, the answer to this one, since I have some experience with this, is that every kid is completely different. So I can't, and I kind of get frustrated on this sometimes because people are like, my kid's 8, so give me good games for an 8-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know your child. I can give ranges usually, but specifics are hard because every child's different. Melody was playing a trick-taking game when she was 2.
Mm.
Jimmy, I'm just happy if he doesn't knock all the pieces over at 3. And really each of my kids has gotten into games differently, and so I would get some of the younger Haba games and just see what happens with them. There's some nice 2+ Haba games,
right?
And let them play with the pieces and just go real slowly and not have any expectations.
Yeah, well, that's certainly the advice I have is don't expect, just because it says 3+ on the box does not mean your 3-year-old is going to be able to handle that. My eldest, it took him until I think 4 years old where he was willing to handle a rule set and actually be willing to follow the constraints of a particular game. Now he loves all sorts of games and we're having a blast. My younger child was resistant for some time. In fact, he said, no, I don't want to play a board game. I would rather play a video game. Please come play Lego Star Wars with me, Daddy. I don't want to play this game here on the table. And it's only recently in the last 6 months or so that he's been willing to play something that is on the table, more because he sees how much fun that his brother and I are having, and now he's interested in the themes and stuff. So he's coming at it from a different angle, being resistant for some time, and is now more willing to play those games. Again, every child comes at it at a different point.
The only thing I would add is making sure, like Tom said, get some of those great, Haba My First games or whatever, but put games out that your kiddo can really just play with as a toy. And the love of board games starts with the love of board games. So give them something that they can gnaw on and, throw around and touch and feel and just kind of develop a love for the components first. And they don't feel any restrictions around that.
Yeah.
All right, I'm excited. It's time for a top 10. Yeah.
Were you going to answer the cool stuff question?
Oh, yeah.
It's not time for a top 10, no.
Yet. We're at Cool Stuff. If you only had a few minutes in Cool Stuff, what would you do? I would go shake their hand and say, you have an awesome store. Then I would go look for the game I've been thinking about buying and buy it. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, it's not like it's a gaming museum that you can walk around and see the exhibits or ride the rides or anything. It's a game store.
Make sure you get on the Carcassonne Meeple World.
I want to go on the Carcassonne Meeple World. That sounds awesome.
Get the Catan Cotton Candy. It's Catan candy.
Oh my gosh, you're developing a board game right now.
I mean, I guess, maybe check out the display case with the trading card games, the Pokemon stuff, if that was something you were into. There's not a whole lot of shelf space at this location. There's a lot of play space. If you only had a few minutes, you could maybe try out a game that you hadn't played before. But yeah, it's kind of hard to pick an attraction at the Cool Stuff store. Talk with the staff and see what they're excited to play.
Now can we get to the top 10?
Okay.
It's a Dice Tower Top 10!
The Dice Tower's Top 10 list is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.
Hey everybody, it's time for a top 10 list. Now, I originally wrote deck building games, but honestly, pool building is kind of the bigger category where you might be... In deck building games, you are building a deck of cards during the course of the game that you are using, but you could also be building a pile of dice. You could be building a bunch of counters in a bag, a bunch of cubes in a bag. It's kind of an all... It's in the same category. And so we expanded this category. Eric took it too far, of course, but...
Nah, it's great.
This is one of my favorite categories of gaming, period. It really is.
Yeah.
When Dominion came on the scene and introduced this, and I was mind-boggled, and each successive game, and people said, there's too many deck-building games, but I really like them. And I'm kind of really even loving his new pool-building thing. I just think it's fun. When I see it's in the game, I'm like, ooh, how can I make myself better over the course of the game?
Well, they all boils down to an efficiency engine, really, for a lot of these. And so if you like those efficiency games, the engine building games, this also fits into it plugs into that same category. This is, again, one of my favorites as well.
I also like that they're evolving as time goes by, and we're seeing different things being done with them. Let's find out what we got.
Let's do it.
Number 10.
My number 10 is going to show up on someone else's list, so I'll sit here trying to figure out which of these two weapons I'm going to stick in my deck.
My number 10 is actually one of my favorite games at this point, but the deck building is a smaller part of it, which is why I have it at number 10 here, and that's Codex. This is from Serlin Games, and this is like, hey, let's mix Mage Knight, Magic the Gathering, and Dominion. Which sounds like an awful idea. But it's a really good card game. I really like this deck building game because, in a sense, the cards you're putting in your deck, you're pulling from a book, kind of like the ones in Mage Wars. So you can pick any card you want and stick it in. Sometimes you need to meet certain requirements to put these cards in your deck, but it's kind of fun. It's like, I'll stick this one in. And every game is going to be different because you can't get all the cards into your deck. And I just really like those options. It's a really, really good two-player game. Codex. Just lots of fun.
I had a chance to play this one and really enjoyed. I enjoyed playing it, and I can certainly see the appeal, and I know why you like it so much, Tom. It just doesn't quite click as a game that I'm wanting to spend a lot of time trying to figure out.
Oh, I wouldn't have even recommended this for you.
Yeah, but a friend drew me into it, so I gave it a whirl, and, thumbs up, but just not for me.
All right, my number 10, I tend to like this move to deck builders as a component of a larger game. And so my number 10 falls into that category with Baseball Highlights 2045. This is a baseball-themed deck-building game set in the future where you have cybernetics and robots and human players all competing in this kind of shorter game of baseball. I really like the way that the cards work, where they have offensive moves and defensive moves in the field, and how the idea of you're drafting your team and you're building up your team, which is your deck. I love that feel to the game. All the cards have, different character names and this really funky art that kind of makes it feel like this weird mix of old-timey art and futuristic art. And then, you've got this element where you're moving runners around the bases and you're pitching at your opponent. For whatever reason, it all just comes together so well for me. And the game is also hugely supported by a ton of these little mini expansions that add different mechanisms and different players. And so there's just a ton of variety and replayability, even in the base game. So Baseball Highlights is one of my favorite deck builders. It's one of my favorite sports themed games. It's a good one.
This was probably my number 11.
Wow.
I really, really love this game.
I feel like I'm missing out on this because I've played it and I was just not really taken with it. I only played one round of the game. So I didn't get the aspect of I'm building up my team and I'm working toward it. Because you usually play like 6 games or something, right?
Yeah, I mean, you play this little... So you literally just played one inning, it sounds like.
I played a round... I think I maybe added 2 or 3 cards to my deck.
Oh, yeah.
Nope. False impressions.
Yeah, so I need another go at this because it really didn't click for me at all, and I don't quite understand why everyone loves this game, and
yeah.
I didn't.
And I can understand it because you essentially demoed the game, Eric. But really, once picking up those mechanisms of how things are running around the base, how you use your cards to plan ahead for the singles, the triples, things like that. Yeah, you give it another shot.
Okay.
Number 9.
My number 9 was on my list. And then I thought about it and I took it off the list because I didn't think it actually applied. But then I thought about it some more and I put it right back in because it's Roll for the Galaxy. And this is a pool building game because you are trying to get cool dice that are going to do the things you want to do in the course of the game. And the way you get new dice is by drafting new planets, building new planets, colonizing these planets, and then add like a blue die into your pool. And then you're pulling a certain number of dice out each round, rolling those, and hopefully if you get enough of a particular type of die, you're able to trigger certain actions more often, trade certain types of goods more often. It is still a smaller aspect of the game compared to some of these other deck and pool builders, but I think it certainly applies, and I love Roll for the Galaxy. It's my number 9.
I didn't pick this one because the game isn't really about growing what you have. There's a few things that give you more dice as the game goes by, but that's not kind of the focus of the game. It's about taking the dice you already have and utilizing them, I feel.
And see, I didn't put this one on my list because I love Roll for the Galaxy. In fact, Eric, I think you're the one that taught me this game a few years ago at like BGG Con or something.
Were you in on the game where we found the misprint and realized that the game was locking up and it's because we didn't have 3 of the player boards? Yes.
Exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. But so I'm with you. I love this game. But the reason why I didn't end up making my list is I felt like that extra randomization element of rolling the dice. Yes, you're building up this pool of dice, but then you have to roll them, right, to get the results you want. That extra layer of randomization, I was like, it's not quite about building the pool at its core. So I didn't put on my list, but it is a great game. I'm with you on that one.
Interesting. So you're saying that any game in which you build a pool of dice and then have to roll them is invalid, is essentially what you're saying.
Thank you. Thank you for completely taking my words exactly how they were meant, Eric.
Okay, good. I'm just making sure that we've logged this.
This is what I have to deal with.
We've just
all
logged
the time.
this. Okay.
It's your fault.
My number 9 is Core Worlds. Core Worlds is a game in which you're building your deck slowly as the game goes by. The cards that you can get better and better as you're going through different eras, and you're conquering planets and taking them over. I often evoke Isaac Asimov's Foundation series as the thematic thing for this, the background for this, and it's really pretty close to what it is. I think the game is best with 3 players. 4 or 5 starts to make it a little too long, I think. Actually, I think I like most deck building games with few players just because it's so fast. But I also like the expansions. The expansions add a lot to this, but still fun. Very, very strong thematic, fun space game, Core Worlds.
Well, my number 9 was lower on Eric's list, so he'll get a chance to talk about it here too, and that is the Pathfinder Adventure card game. Personally, I really enjoy this game, but as an app. I've played it in real life with friends, and we had a good time, but as a cooperative game, which just isn't my preferred type of game, I found that I was frustrated that I didn't feel like I was involved in enough decisions and had enough control. But as an app First of all, it is so quick and easy to pick up, and this app is so well done. I play Pathfinder adventure card game all the time, and I absolutely love it. Building up your deck, going to the different locations, balancing all those the magic that you have to deal with. It's so much fun and very immersive. Eric, what do you think?
I mean, the system is fascinating. I treat this like it's a fine clock with all of the moving pieces and the way you adjust your deck from adventure to adventure and which cards do you add. And it really is a deck building game because the whole point is that you work through an adventure and you've acquired more cards that are then making your character stronger for the next adventure. And it's a little bit in slow motion, but you gain a couple, 3 cards on a run and figure out how you're going to distribute those amongst the team. When you build your way up through a deck, you get some like major bonuses and upgrading your characters. I think it's fascinating the way this all works. I've played the app. And I am afraid that if I started, if I paid for, because you can get it for free and just try it out. But if I paid for all the decks, I would never open the box again. And I spent good money on the box cards. And I still want to work through those with my son. So I'm still working my way through Rise of the Runelords. I don't need any of the other sets that have been released since then. Still happy with my one box of Pathfinder, the adventure card game. My number 10.
How many people are keeping up with this? There's a lot of stuff for it.
I've heard that they slowed it down because folks were getting overwhelmed. But I also have met some players that have kept up as the decks come out month after month or every 2 months or whatever it is the release schedule is now. That this is one of their regular games that they play all the time, and they've had to be waiting for the new character or the new adventure decks as they come out.
Yeah, me too. I have a group of friends that they are avid fans of this game. They play it constantly. They search out every promo and everything they can get for it. They love it.
Number 8.
My number 8 is going to show up on somebody else's list, but I have a feeling that they have a more epic view of it than I do.
My number 8 is the game from Cool Mini or Not that no one ever talks about. That's Xenoshift. I really enjoy this game. It's this cooperative deck building game, and I'm a big fan of co-op games because I'm not as mean as Suzanne is. And actually, there's a good chunk of cooperative deck building games that are out there. It's starting to be more of a thing. But Xenoshift you're fighting against these nasty big aliens, kind of like Starship Troopers. They just keep coming in, and you're like blowing them away. But the thing I like about it is you have to work together. So I'll be like, hey, throw me a grenade. Okay, here's a grenade. You probably shouldn't throw someone a grenade. But send me this, and you're working together trying to stop them. It's a hard game. I just find it a lot of fun. You're involved the whole time. Also, probably best with 3. That feels like something I might say often. But Xenoshift.
Xenoshift also has an app version, and if you have a large tablet screen, it plays quite well. But don't try to play it on your phone. It'll technically run on a phone. There's way too much going on to play on a phone.
Yeah.
Well, my number 8 is Mystic Vale from AEG. And Mystic Vale is one of these games that uses AEG's clear card system. They call it a card crafting system. So you have this series of cards that are made of clear plastic, and you put them in these custom sleeves, and each card has, maybe a side banner or a top, a middle, or a bottom illustration on it that has abilities or powers or points or whatever on it. And as you go building up your deck, you're really building up these cards, trying to put together powerful cards that maybe feed off of itself or feed off of the other cards in your deck. And I know that this was really AEG's first card crafting release. They've got a number of games coming out that use this system that go both lighter weight and heavier weight in kind of the mechanisms. But I like Mystic Vale. I like the card crafting system. I think it's fun. And, you get these moments when you play Mystic Vale and that card you've been working so hard on crafting perfectly that just wham, you play it down and you get all this money and all these points and all these combos fire off with one card. It feels so rewarding to do that. And I love those really awesome moments in games. And Mystic Vale is one of those games that give me those awesome moments. So it is my number 8 deck builder.
This was probably in my top 20, although I haven't picked up a copy of this yet. But I may have to, now that my son, we were at a convention recently, and he was off playing some games with some other families. And he came back and said, Dad, have you ever played a game called Mystic Vale? And he was all excited about it. And I said, no, did you like it? And I think I may need to get a copy for his birthday or something.
Sounds perfect. And there's a bunch of expansions. They're just about to release the second expansion, and I've heard this new expansion is awesome. So you check that out too.
Yeah, I really like it. I like to see the second expansion maybe do something different. The first one, which awfully, what was it called? Mystic Vale?
Veil of Magic. But they're all Veil of something. So they were actually setting up something, yeah.
Oh, my word. All right.
Number 7.
My number 7 is going to show up on somebody else's list. So I'll be here trying to figure out what to do with a handful of vowels.
My number 7, I think, is not so popular because I don't think it's like really hit wide distribution yet. And that's Vikings Gone Wild. I don't think either of you have played this yet.
No, I covered it in my Kickstarter segment on Board Game Breakfast, and it looked cool.
Yeah, I really like this. It's in this new category of deck builders with something else involved in them. And so this when you're building a deck, but you then will fight other players. But you're not actually fighting. You're attacking their buildings, and if you win when you attack their buildings, you get points, but they don't really lose anything. So I like that, right? It gives it, but if they defend successfully, they could get points instead of you. And I kind of like that. And as time goes by, you can get like an awesome card in your deck that no one else has. Like Thor might show up in your deck. That's pretty awesome. And it just has a lot of fun involved in it. It has cards that you can buy, lots of puzzle cards you can always buy, but it also has a deck at the top, like Ascension, where there's all different cards that are constantly being cycled through. It just has a different feel to it. It's a lot of fun. And there's several expansions out. I haven't played all of them yet. I played the co-op one, which was okay. But the next two have me pretty excited. But that's Vikings Gone Wild.
All right.
Which is also not the best name, I think.
Well, in another interestingly named deck building game, my number 7 is Super Motherload. And that is Motherload spelled Load, which came with its own controversy as far as how the name was spelled. Super Motherload is a game in which you lay out these boards that have different minerals on them. And the part of the game is you are drilling down, like the board illustrates underground, right? And you're drilling down to get to these different minerals and treasures that are under the ground. And you do this through a series of through your own deck that have, different abilities on them, like bombing items or, double drilling and things like that. And of course, you build your deck through a deck building mechanism. Super Motherload is one of those games that feels like it flew a little bit under the radar. I don't know if I've seen a lot of people talking about it, but it's one I quite enjoy. The deck building in and of itself is rewarding. One of the things it does a little bit uncommonly is, as you have these cards that you can purchase, it's stacked, so they get more expensive as you go down. So maybe the first one's only $5 and it has 1 drill on it. And then the next one down is $7, but it has 2 drills. And you keep on going down, and the abilities and point value of the cards change as the cards get more expensive, which I think is a really interesting way to market for a deck builder game. And really just the way you build your deck and kind of the gratifying gameplay as you're drilling down kind of has, I don't know, not a dig dug feeling quite, but it's very visceral. It gives you that thing. You're actually covering up spaces as you go down that makes it look like you dug through the ground. Super Motherload is quick, fun, light, and a really fun deck builder people should check out.
Yeah, this one's definitely in the category of games I really like, and it's still my collection. It has that different feel to it. And you don't have to worry about other people buying the cards you want because you can buy your specific ones. But it's more than just the deck building, which I think is fun.
Absolutely.
Number 6.
My number 6 is a very unique style of deck builder.
Hang on.
Well, I was Oh, never mind.
Eric, all of
My
you've
number
just got
6
good
I was
taste.
really excited to talk about until I realized it's on somebody else's tomb as well, so I'll talk about it then.
You're not even trying at this point. Hey, Suzanne and I crossed over on our number 6.
Ta-da!
And this is the absolutely fabulous recent deck builder, and that's Clank. This is in that same category as Vikings Gone Wild. Clank, where it's deck building, but something else. And in this case, you are searching, going down into a dungeon, pushing your luck to see how far down you can get and grab treasure and get out. That's your typical, hey, I play cards to give me money to buy other cards, but also attack that I can attack monsters, but also movement to let me move through this really cool map. And there's 2 maps included in the game. And there's an expansion that adds 2 more maps. I played Clank probably more than any other deck builder on this list in the last 12 months. It just every time I see someone, I'm like, ooh, do you want to play Clank? I don't know what it is. I'm just really loving on this game lately.
It comes together so well in such a great package. I like the way the market works. I like building up your deck. I mean, of course, what I really, really like is encouraging other people to go for the really juicy treasure at the bottom of the board and, you know, in the hope that they get eaten while I just kind of dash down, grab the best thing I can and get out before everybody else can. I mean, I don't do that at all. Never mind.
No.
I really love that Clank brought something fun and exciting when you're pulling those cubes out of the Clank bag and throwing them down and watching your life whittle away. There's genuine tension there. And while there's some random elements to it, I never feel like it's out of your control. And we've had a lot of fun. This is one of those games where everybody ends up yelling a lot around the table, and I actually think that's a good sign. So that's Clank.
Yeah, I like it too. This was maybe my number 12. I've only had a chance to play it once at a party, but it is solid. It's fun, visceral, as you're hoping that your cubes don't come out of that dragon bag. Really cool game.
Number 5.
My number 5 is on other people's list, but it doesn't matter because I feel like I've talked about this already.
My number 5 is higher on Eric's list. He thinks he's in charge.
Well, my number 5 was lower onto Eric's list, and that is Paperback by Tim Fowers.
And was number 12 on mine.
Yeah.
So still pretty highly rated for you, Tom. Paperback is a combination of deck building and a word game. You are collecting letters. Cards are letters that you are putting into your deck, and as you draw them each round or each hand, you have to try to build the best words you can. Letters will give you points. Some letters have abilities. And as you're going, you're trying to complete these novel cards that are worth victory points at the end of the game. And when, a certain number of these novels get depleted, the game is over. I just think Paperback was innovative when it came out. I'm like, a word game and deck building. Why didn't anybody think of this before? It's super fun. And I'm horrible at it, but I still enjoy it.
Yeah, and it offers some really tricky decisions because each card that you can add to your deck not only has an ability on it, but it also is worth a certain number of points, and that varies. And it also is a letter that you will be having to use to make more words. So if you get a Q into your deck, you better have some U's in there that you can be sure to use. I mean, there are wild cards that make it a little bit easier. It's rare that you get totally locked up, but what you put into your deck is a tricky decision in many cases because you know you're going to need to use those abilities, use those letters to make more words in the near future.
Now, I will say, if we were to do this list again next year, Paperback would not be on this list. I know that for sure.
Because it's going to be replaced by hardback?
Because of hardback. I got to play a pre-release copy of Hardback, and it is really good. It takes that idea of a word game deck builder and kind of goes in the direction of Star Realms a little bit, where there are different genres of books that have synergies that play off of each other. That wild card element you talked about, Eric, is a little different here, and I quite like the way it's done. So paperback is awesome. Even with hardback, it'll be in my collection, but I'm really looking forward to hardback too.
Okay. Well, you don't have to convince me. I already backed it, so yeah.
Well, cool.
Number 4.
Moving on to number 4. Let me just check and make sure this isn't on anybody. Wait, it isn't. Flip City is my number 4. And I love the primary mechanism to this, where you've got cards that are two-sided and you acquire them into your deck in one side, but then you can pay to flip them over and they're a better version of that card. And there's also a push your luck aspect, because one of the goals of the game is to get a certain number of victory point symbols. And if you manage to get enough of them, you win. Or if you play 18 cards out, you can win as well. But you have to avoid getting the frowny faces and just manipulate. There's a lot of deck manipulation in this game. What do you pay to flip? What do you flip back over? Because you can trigger abilities in your discard pile. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you don't see in many other deck builders in this. There's a lot more to what's in this little box for Flip City. That's my number 4. I love it.
Yeah, I figured you'd have this one on there. You like those smaller deck building games, as we'll see again soon.
Yes.
My number 4 is Marvel Legendary. I really like this one. I'm a huge Marvel fan. And I like cooperative deck building games. As I mentioned before, this mixes those together. It also provides you with literally trillions of combinations.
Yeah.
Trillions of combinations. Which, if you think about it, is really too many. Sometimes I'll be like, I could play this game a million different ways.
Right.
You're never going to play it 1,000 different ways.
Right.
Wow. You're not even going to play it 100 different ways. Shut up now. I can play it 1 trillion ways. But still, it's kind of cool that there's that many combinations. Also, did I mention it's Marvel? But it's a really fun game. That's Marvel Legendary.
All right. Well, my number 4 was lower on poor Eric's list. So, Eric, why don't you tell us your thoughts on my number 4 and your number 6 game?
Valley of the Kings, which is an AEG game that you are drafting cards from a pyramid structure, which I think is cool. You can only draft from the bottom of that pyramid, and then those cards cascade down. So it's almost like a conveyor belt of cards that you can see coming at you and sort of anticipate what you'll be able to purchase in the future. But you can manipulate those cards around so that you can buy the ones you want. Plus, it's a set collection game. So you're taking cards out of your deck, out of your hand, and entombing them in order to create sets that earn you points, and that's ultimately how you win. So when do you take that awesome card out of your deck and so you can score it? Tricky decisions to be made in Valley of the Kings. How about you, Suzanne?
Absolutely. And I agree with everything you said. I love that cascading pyramid. It really affects, which cards you pick when you know what's coming down the pipe for your opponents. But really, the heart of that game is Valley of the Kings, more than a lot of other deck builders, it feels like it's an engine building game where you have to crank up your engine and then know when to shut it off and start moving cards out of your deck into your tomb. And I love that part of this game. You nailed it. It's absolutely those tricky moments of decision of when can you give up that really awesome card that is doing so well for you in the, in building your deck, but you need it for that set for the points. Valley of Kings brings something unique to the table with deck builders, and that's why it's my number 4.
Number 3.
Number 3, similarly to Tom's number 4, is Legendary Encounters. Slightly different system than the basic Legendary, the Marvel Legendary.
I would argue it's a lot different, actually.
It does. I mean, it shares many similarities, but it's also a very different feel. Encounters, I think, is a stronger cooperative game. There's more ways to help each other using the coordinate effect of different cards. You can play cards on other players' turns. There's also that row at the top of the board where you can't see what's coming at you right away, so you have to spend abilities and actions to flip cards over. There's a little bit of a surprise element. Things get bad if bad guys make it into the primary battle zone before you flip them over. just a little bit more going on that makes it feel a little more visceral. I still love Marvel Legendary, but I feel like Encounters is a superior system, which is why it's my number 3.
Yeah, I just think I know it's probably a better game. It's just sometimes it's a little too much. I just want to beat monsters up.
Sure.
Or villains up, I guess.
Sure.
Hey, Suzanne and I sync up again. We've already mentioned this game earlier in the episode when Eric was raving about its expansion, and that's Orléans. This is a heavier Euro game in which you have different workers in your bag that you will pull out and combine these workers to take different actions, which are often to get more of these workers, which will let you take other actions. Or, I'm going to stop because every time I think about Orléans, I want to go play it. I really do. This is a fun Euro game that just has a lot going on in it. And it's one of the 3-way crossovers on our list.
Yes.
Yeah, I really like that, the buildings that you can get to add on that gives you your personal spots that you can really craft your strategy around. So, whether you're trying to build up an army of specific types of workers, or whether you're focused on, the journey over on the board where you're moving to get the different resource tokens and things like that. I love Orléans in part because there are so many different strategies that you can pursue. So you can play a different game every time if you want. And I really like that element to it.
I agree. This was my number 5. You have so many options. And it also depends on what you draw out of your bag. You can't always go in the direction you want to because you don't get the particular characters that you need. So you may have to go in a different direction, trigger different abilities, get different guys into your bag. So many paths to take, and you can't focus on them all. And it's a delicious challenge. I love it.
Number 2.
Number 2 on my list, Tom vandalized, I think. He wrote incorrect category, so I'm looking forward to his response to Concordia. This is a Matt Gertz game.
Could have been Suzanne.
It could have been Suzanne, but I don't think it was you. You are constructing your deck of cards. It's actually a hand. Okay, fine. It's a hand building game because you are acquiring cards that not only will be allowing you to trigger actions more often in this game, but you are also acquiring your scoring cards that will play toward your strategy and hopefully earn you lots of points throughout the course of the game. But the drafting of the cards into your hand is a major aspect of this. And if you ignore that aspect of the game, you're not going to do very well in Concordia. So I think if you consider the deck and that you have the entire deck in your hand, it's a deck building game. It's also very, very good. It's my number 2, Concordia.
Look, you can't say it's very, very good as that's why it's on the list. There's lots of very, very good games.
Yes.
I agree it's very good. I don't know. I just don't... You're building a hand of cards. You get a few extra cards over the course of the game.
It's more than a few.
Yeah, okay, it's several, but it's not the same.
You have to get cards that allow you to trigger actions more often than just one time through your hand. So you really, the tailoring of what actions are available to you is vastly important in Concordia.
Suzanne, we need you to break this tie.
I'm sorry, what? I'm just going to stand back here and let you guys work this out between each other.
Oh.
Fine.
This plan isn't working, Tom. We need the tiebreaker. All right.
Hey, Eric, if it's any consolation, it was almost on my list.
Oh, good.
Almost doesn't count. All right, number 2 for me is Thunderstone Advance, which was on Eric's list at number 8 because we didn't allow him to have any kind of original list this time. But anyway, the Thunderstone is a great game. I am looking forward to Thunderstone Quest to see what the 3rd version is. But Thunderstone Advance, I like the idea of having a dungeon crawl a deck builder in a dungeon crawl setting. With the epic version of this is the way I play it. In fact, I've actually thrown cards away because I don't ever use them. I know it's anathema to some people.
What?
But, like for example, the cards come in 10-card decks, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in Epic, I only use 4 of each card. So I just threw the other 6 away.
You couldn't give them to somebody else who's doing the same thing?
Suzanne, as I said that out loud, I thought what you just said and it does seem a little dumb now. But there are some things in the game that you don't, that are like all the monsters. I didn't get rid of any of the monsters.
Right. All right.
Shut up. I'm gonna I like Thunderstone Advance. Epic style.
This was my number 8 as well. I do enjoy this adventure. I don't play the epic version. I go with the basic, the way it is in the primary rules. My fear, I'm interested in Quest as well, but I fear that the same thing that's happened with the original Thunderstone is going to happen with my Thunderstone Advance cards now. I've tried to sell my set of original Thunderstone like twice now, and no one wants to buy it. Because it's the old edition. It's still a perfectly good game. No one wants them, and I don't want to throw them away, like Tom apparently does. Anyway, so I worry that Thunderstone Advance cards are now going to, follow the same route as people are adopting Quest.
This is going to be one of those things I regret saying. I can feel it.
For now, though, Thunderstone Advance is an excellent system, and it's a blast. I have not played this with my kids yet. I haven't delved into that to see how they respond, but I'm looking forward to it.
All right, well, my number 2 falls squarely into that pool building expansion of the category, and that is Automobiles from AEG, designed by David Short. This is a racing game, and it is really, honestly, one of my all-time favorite games. Instead of building a deck of cards, you're going to be building up this pool of different colored cubes to push your car around the track to ultimately try to win the race. There are 2 different types of cubes. There are cubes that align to the track, which has white, light gray, dark gray, and black stripes on it. The coloring of the track cubes can be a little iffy between that light gray and dark gray, but the game's so fun, you get over it. So when you pull up those cubes are the ones, oh, look, there's a white space in front of me. Okay, I can put the white cube, use the white cube to go there. Oh, look, there's a light gray space. Okay, and I didn't get a light gray space. Oh, nuts, I'm stuck. But then there are engine improvement cubes that come in a range of colors, red, green, yellow, whatever. And you can buy any of these cubes to build up your pool. So maybe you have cubes that let you thin your pool and get rid of the nasty wear cubes that you accumulate as you race around this track. Or maybe you have something that lets you, you always get to move an extra light gray space depending on where you're positioned in the race when you stop your movement. There is something about pulling these cubes out of the bag. That fistful of cubes is extremely rewarding to me. And of course, as a racing game, when I move my car around the track, I get to make car noises, which I also always enjoy. Automobiles is a wonderful, wonderful racing and pool building game. I've taught it to a lot of people and spread the good word of it. And that is my number 2 deck building or pool building game.
Yeah, I don't know. I like Automobiles, and I'm really excited about an expansion. I just don't feel like getting it as part of a set.
Yeah, that's a tough thing for sure. I'm going to get it because I love Automobiles so very, very much. And I've gotten to play. I got to preview the expansion a little bit with the designer. There's some really good stuff, like drivers with abilities that are all way overpowered. Yeah, but all the drivers are way overpowered. But then somehow in those massive power surges, they balance each other out. It's good.
But is it worth getting a planes expansion for?
Yeah, I traded away.
I'm telling you.
Traded away.
To who? No one plays planes. No one likes it.
Ouch.
I haven't played Automobiles because I tried planes and went, I don't really think I'm going to follow down this path. Knowing, of course, the Automobiles...
No, they're totally different games.
It's a totally different game,
totally
but
different games.
I got such a bad taste out of planes that I'm like, I'll pass.
Eric, knowing this about you, the next time we cross paths at the convention, I'm prepare yourself. I'm going to make you play this game with me.
I will be prepared.
Oh, that will be interesting to watch.
And finally, number 1.
Number 1. Sometimes you just got to go with the granddaddy, and that's Dominion. One thing that seems to be the case with a lot of the ones we've been talking about is they've added layers on to this deck building system. And what I love about Dominion is how clean it is. Unless you get like an array with a whole bunch of attack cards, Dominion goes very quickly. And when you're playing with players that know the system well and are just, it's a lot of shuffling and playing, and I do this and I do that, and it has a real nice clip to it. And with all of the various expansions, you've got endless combinations of these cards, and the way they all interact, I still find it fascinating and really love, on occasion, just to sit down and play like 3-4 rounds of Dominion. It's always a blast, and it's my number one deck builder, still.
It's fantastic. It really is. It's always on my top 10 somewhere when it comes to these games. It's a machine, but it's a fun machine, and it's always fun to see what kind of combinations you can get. And we now know that they lied about the last expansion, and they're never going to stop making expansions for it.
Yeah.
Which you don't sound that disappointed with.
No, but I also don't care that much anymore. If someone said, a new Dominion expansion came out, I'd be like, yeah, I'll get to it.
Yeah.
I guess, maybe. I don't know. I do like it a lot, though. Yeah, I'd play the new expansion. I don't know why I sound so depressed. Oh, bother.
Oh, well.
Dice Masters! Yeah! Quarriors, the dice building game. I liked it a lot. Then Dice Masters came along and let me build what I'm going to be building my dice pool out of during the course of the game. I get to bring in all these dice and pick which dice get to go in my deck or my bag of dice. And it's also Marvel superheroes. And it also plays very similar to Magic the Gathering. And it's fun. And you roll dice and you attack each other. And you can have Batman fight Superman, fight Spider-Man, fight Professor X. It's so much fun. And it seems like no one plays it, but they keep making more sets. So I'm sure lots of people do play it.
I do really enjoy Dice Masters. I just don't get it to the table as much as I want to, which always bums me out. It is super fun.
I agree. This was on my short list, and it almost made it on. It's one that I haven't followed the rabbit hole on, though. I've got my Marvel set, and I'm perfectly happy with that. It's another one, though, that the kids are, I think, really going to enjoy when I bring it out and play with them.
All right, and my number one deck builder game is Star Realms. Anybody who knows me, I have played online in the app version. I have played almost 2,000 games of Star Realms. So, I think the word addiction is taking it a little too far, but it's clearly a game I truly enjoy. It's simple. It's clean. I like the PvP element of it. I like that you're building up a deck to do more than just buy more cards, and I like the different synergies that the different factions bring you. Maybe you're going to go for something that thins your deck and put a lot of the machine element in your deck, or maybe you're just going to go full bore attack and build up a bunch of green blob cards in your deck. Also, they have a faction named the Blob, which is amazing. So, Star Realms is, I think, a new classic as far as I'm concerned in the deck building genre. The fact that it's so quick and simple to play definitely ups it on my list because I can toss it down anytime. And I really like what the expansions bring to it too, with leaders and events and things like that. So Star Realms is my number one deck builder.
What about Hero Realms?
I have not played Hero Realms. I just picked it up and I'm really, really looking forward to it. Especially with the different, I think the really interesting part will be those different faction decks, right? So if you're a rogue, you have kind of a unique rogue deck. That sounds awesome.
And what about Cthulhu Realms?
I like Cthulhu Realms. I think mechanically it brings, the small twists it brings to the Star Realms formula are good. I personally did not enjoy the graphic design of the icons. I find them difficult to see and differentiate, unfortunately, which meant it just didn't get played. When you had the choice of the cleaner graphic design of Star Realms against the kind of more clunky, busy graphic design of Cthulhu Realms, it was kind of my friends all went towards Star Realms. What did you guys think?
Yeah, you know what? That's exactly it. I think the game itself was a very good game. I thought it was a slam dunk, Cthulhu plus Star Realms, but the iconography killed that game.
I wasn't as bothered by the iconography. I guess I was more enamored with the mechanical upgrades, and you sort of start with an slightly upgraded deck, which they then used in Hero Realms. You start with a slightly upgraded deck as opposed to the very basic Star Realms deck. I guess if I had to rank them, I'd probably go with Hero Realms with the characters, and then Cthulhu, then Star.
Interesting.
For the mechanics.
All right, so what did the people say in their voting? Number 10, baseball highlights. This actually surprises me because sports games don't usually get that much love, but this one is, obviously. Number 9, Pathfinder the card game. Number 8, Mage Knight the board game.
Oh.
There's deck building in it.
There is.
Small deck building, but it's there. Number 7, Roll for the Galaxy.
See?
Vindicated.
Hey. Well, we should always be very cautious that having a lot of people agree does not mean you're right.
But in this case, it does.
Number 6 is Marvel Legendary. Number 5, Paperback. Number 4, Clank. Number 3, Orléans. Number 2, Star Realms. And number 1, Dominion.
There we go.
I believe it's safe to say Suzanne is the voice of the people this time.
Woohoo!
Yeah, I think so.
And the people clearly have excellent taste.
Well, there you go, folks. That is what our new episodes will sound like. Well, at least this one. Next week, we'll have a much shorter episode. We'll just talk about some games and move on from there. But this was a lot of fun. And Suzanne, we're really glad you came and joined us.
I had so much fun. Thank you so much for having me. It was a real honor to be the guest on 501.
501. It sounds like, I don't know. Well, either way, it's time for us to end this thing, Eric. So what's the outro sound like? Oh, that's right. I'm supposed to say.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Until next time, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
And I'm Eric Summerer.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode, number 501, was recorded on April 5th, 2017. Coming up next week, what should we call our shorter chat-style show? See if we've figured it out yet. Support for this podcast comes from listeners like you. Thank you for your continuing support. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund is dedicated to providing support to members of the board gaming community in their hour of need. Find out more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackvassell.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom and me, with production assistance from Itai Perez, Derek Porter, and Rob Searing. Our theme was composed by Timothy Pinkham. Old-timey warnings to listen to scary stories about pork products brought to you by Hark Ham Horror. And hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games at great prices at coolstuffinc.com. We love feedback. Visit the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com. Email us at dicetower@gmail.com or follow us on Facebook. And of course, you can find more from the Dice Tower Network, including Board Gamers Anonymous, Board Game Corner, the Push Your Luck Podcast, Rolling Dice and Taking Names, the Geek All-Stars, Dukes of Dice, Our Turn, and Board Game Breakfast at dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. So when you're playing Star Realms and you have the blob cards, do you sing the blob song?
Would you care to demonstrate the blob song for me, Eric, just to make sure I'm getting it right?
Beware of the blob, it creeps and seeps and glides and slides across the floor, right through the door and over on the wall. A splotch, a blotch, be careful of the blob.
What is going on?
What, you don't know that song? What? What? I'm not the only one that... No, I did not make this up.
Oh, Eric. My dear,
It's the
dear
blob.
Eric.
It's the blob song.